Hi guys, welcome to your weekly dose of inspiration to live healthy and happy. So, what does success mean to you? And does it mean the same thing that it did 5 years ago or 10 years ago? Not for me. It has been redefined in a major way, and I would even say over the past couple of years, because of certain experiences, certain lessons learned, certain disappointments, and also as you get older, you start to know yourself better, and maybe you realize that your definition of success when you were younger might have been passed on to you from your parents. So it was basically your parents' definition of success. But with time, you have made your own definition of success. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe you had made your own definition of success 5 years ago or when you were younger, and you've realized that it's evolved. So we are living, breathing creatures. We are constantly growing, constantly evolving, and it is normal that our dreams and our goals and our definitions of certain key things in life change with time, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So I wanted to give a few examples of how certain definitions or certain kind of milestones of success meant in my life. So I'll give you an example. This is kind of really, to be honest, really personal, but from a money point of view. So for me, money was a huge thing that was, I would say, probably passed on to me, which having a lot of money could be one of it could be the only definition of success. It could be your only symbol of success in your life, right? So what happens if you lose your job, or if you have a job that doesn't pay a lot of money, or you decide to go out on your own and start your own business, and for a couple of years you don't have that much money? When your definition of success is money, and then for some reason you have less, or you don't have any, or whatever your situation is, you feel like a big loser. You feel like you're worth zero, because that's where you had let your value rest, and that's probably also how you define other people's values. So that's something to be aware of as well. So for me, material things, money, they were always a major part of how I define success, and there's nothing wrong with that. I would say to this day, it's kind of part of how I define success, but it used to be almost everything, and now it's become just a portion. I wouldn't say like a small portion. For me, it's important because for me, actually, money represents other things, which I'll get into a bit later. And those things that money allows me to do, that for me represents being successful. So I shifted the place, the importance that I put on money as a definition of success, because I was quite lucky in my career, where I had, I went out of university and I got a job, and I was paid, decently. And then I went up the ladder in the corporate world quite quickly. And by a certain age, I was making like quite a good salary. And yet at one point I felt really empty. And so for me, I was like, okay, so I kind of met that goal of what success meant. And for me, I was like, success means happiness, and I wasn't happy. So for me, there was something that was wrong there. And that's part of the reasons where I started redefining certain things about what success meant to me. Since we're talking about money, I actually wanted to share something with you. I wrote a blog post recently, and I will link it below. It's a guided visualization exercise focused on success. And I actually like redefining what success means to me when I do that guided visualization, because at first, as I say, in the back of my mind, success, I still kind of associate it to like material things and money and a big home and all that. And so I kind of have to remind myself on a daily basis what success means to me, to make sure that I stay on track with the decisions I make and how I evaluate myself at the end of the day. Okay, was that a successful day? Do I feel successful? So, sorry, I have this itchy nose. So I kind of listed certain things that maybe money, because as I said, money, financial abundance for me is part of my definition of success, but I just listed some of the things that maybe money will allow me to do. And I would say I kind of aim to be able to do those things, rather than saying, well, I want money, I want to earn a certain, salary, or well, I want a big house. So for me, I said, well, okay, money allows me to go, let's say, on yoga retreats. It allows me to visit beautiful places in the world. It allows me to take care of myself, to buy healthy food, to maybe have a personal trainer, to go to yoga classes. one of the key things, and this is something that's, I would say, comes more with age in my case, like I want to be able to spoil my family and friends and take care of them like they've taken care of me my whole life. I want to be able to do that too. So for me in my life, if I'm taking good care of my family and my friends, and it doesn't necessarily mean from a material or financial point of view, but if I'm giving them the love and the presence that they need, for me, I'm being successful. And on that note, very quickly, I actually wanted to recommend a book that I read a few months ago, and it is so good. And if I told you the title now, you say, well, what does that have to do with success? But seriously, that book allowed me to shift what success means and what like having a good day or being a good person means. And it's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. So I apologize. The title is a bit rude, but it is such a good book. It is, I find it's quite a light read, even though like I feel like I did kind of like a lot of inner work as I read it, because it really allowed me to notice in a day how I defined success for myself. And sometimes like I think I realized like, okay, well, success meant having other people's approval, and I was like, well, that's ridiculous. Like that is totally out of my control. So then I had to redefine it to, okay, well, success means I fully show up for myself in that meeting and I really do my best. I give it my all, and however people react, like non-verbally or whatever, like verbal recognition, or they give you like kudos, that's not how I'm going to define success for that. And that can be tricky. So it involves a certain mindset shift for certain things. A few other little elements like, you know, okay, so money will allow me to create a beautiful, welcoming home. I want to feel comfortable in my home. I want to feel like it's a good energy. And then there's a bunch of stuff that I listed like regarding exercise and all that. So for me, once again, if you do a bit of a shift there, so for me, a successful day means I've done exercise, I've moved, I've really taken care of my body in some way. So you can see the difference. Like when I was younger, for me, success was, okay, making good money, having a boyfriend, cute boyfriend that made good money, that was nice and all that. And yeah, like having friends, having like a nice apartment. So it was a lot like external things, which is totally fine. But with time, I've kind of added a few more layers to that, and maybe I've removed a few layers and all that. And that's okay, because if you just kind of go on automatic pilot and you don't ever take the opportunity to redefine success, you might be at a point in your life where you've reached those goals. And as I was saying earlier, you feel kind of empty, you don't feel happy, and you're like, well, why is that? Like, well, because maybe internally who you really are, those things are maybe not that important, or that isn't enough. And then, well, what is the rest? And so for me, that's what I realized over the years is there's this whole internal world. Who we are isn't just physical human beings. We are spiritual beings as well. And so our definition of success can't ignore that part of who we are. So stay with me. I know you might be feeling like it's getting pretty deep, but that's reality. We're not just physical creatures. So if you really ignore that part of yourself, you might be working really hard to check all those success boxes, and yet you could be completely drained and feel completely empty. So it's important to do a lot of internal work. And as I was saying, so I went through different phases in my life. At one point it was my career. I had, I wanted the prestigious title and the salary that went with that. And then I got that, like with hard work and all that. But I was lucky that I wasn't necessarily, 50 years old when I got that. I was in my 30s. And then I had to redefine, well, once I met that goal, well, then what does it mean? Well, at that point I said, well, it's going out on my own and starting my own business. Defining success can be so many different things. It's like you have to almost draw what are the key areas in my life, and what does success mean in each of those areas. So one probably is money. You can't ignore money. It's part of our our daily life, and we can't really function without it, or it can be very difficult. But then so money is one thing, but then what is the friendship, being a good friend, having good friends, your health. So that for me is a really, really big one. So in the decisions I make in the day and how I prioritize what I do in the day, it's based on those areas and the importance that each of them have, because we have to remind ourselves that it's very difficult to have it all. I think we realize we strive to have it all, but it's very difficult to have it all or all at once. And so we have to make certain choices, and sometimes it's big life choices, but often it's just daily small daily choices that we make in the foods that we eat, and if we decide to work out or not, if we decide to be fully present for that person, that friend or family member that calls us up, and maybe we've had a bad day and then we're not fully present and we're not there when they need us. So it's all those little shifts. And what does it mean for me, for you, to be successful as a human being, or to be successful as, I like to say, a spiritual being having a human experience? And that allows you to really dive into the different layers of who you really are, and to not neglect those important layers that maybe when we're younger, we're not too in tune with or even aware of. But as we get older, many of us start to realize that. And that's when we say, okay, we have to give TLC to those deeper layers. We have to attribute value to them, and to say, okay, well then what does success mean to me when it comes to those deeper layers? So I also think that if you want to be successful, you have to set clear intentions. And like anything, if you don't set a clear intention, you're just kind of like going to go wherever like life takes you. One day you'll be feeling great, you'll check all those success boxes, but then the next day, if you're not feeling so great for whatever reason, you might kind of go off track, and maybe you'll be kind of, have a short fuse with somebody, or start eating bad food, when in fact one of your criteria for success is being healthy, and so eating good foods. So it really helps to make a conscious decision in those key markers, if you will, of success. And remember that we are perfectly imperfect. So even if you do have that super clear list of what your goals are and what success means to you, not one day is the same. And that's from an external point of view, but for an internal point of view too. So we're not always superstars. Sometimes we have a bit of an off day and we make maybe a bad decision, but always remember, do not start kicking yourself and judging yourself and being harsh with yourself when that happens. Just kind of come back to your center and say, okay, I somehow got off track there. That's okay. It happens. Forgive myself. Let's move on. Let's remind ourselves what are, once again, the key markers of success, and how can I move forward and maybe make better decisions tomorrow. So I hope this is helpful. I would love to know how you define success, and if it's changed for you over the years, or if you're kind of like, you've gone in a straight line and you've wanted one thing when you were 15 and now you're 45 and it's the same things. I find that very fascinating. And I think it's nice to share our story and our evolution with other people, because sometimes we think we're alone in going through these things, and really we're kind of all in this together. We have different experiences. We're, individual beings, but at the same time, there's a lot of like key learnings that when we share them with each other, we feel less alone. We can struggle less. We can learn from other people's experiences and lessons learned. So why not make, life easier for ourselves? So I hope this is helpful. I wish you a wonderful week. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't signed up to the newsletter yet, or if you're on YouTube and you're watching, don't forget to subscribe, and you can even turn on notifications. I never remember where that bell is, on the right or the left. And I love you very much. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye.